Good evening, YouTube. I'm James, and I almost didn't make this video. In the mail today, I received from a friend who recommended it to me, this book. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, by Norman L. Geisler and Frank Turek. I'd gotten it, and I thought I'd do a vlog type thing. I'd read the book to you and give my thoughts as I was reading it, because this friend of mine, and if you're watching this, you know who you are, had talked to me. And among my friends and family, I'm known to be an outspoken atheist. And of course, a lot of our family friends are Christian because for a while we attended a local church. And much of my family is still Christian. So they all keep in touch, of course. And this friend, who is a very nice lady, no problem with her at all on a personal level, recommended this book to me to, probably to help me come back to God, as it were. I was raised Christian, and yeah, but yeah, I wasn't gonna do this. I changed my mind. I'm a bit camera shy. I didn't want to offend anybody, because you don't talk about religion on the internet usually. But then I started reading the book. Yeah, it's I got through the foreword and some of the preface. It's something. It's something. I'd like to share that with you, and specifically my friend, who I'm sure will be very interested, having recommended this book. I'm gonna skip the foreword. Obviously, it's not important. It's a lot of praise. It's a lot of praise for this book. And having read the foreword, and as far in as I've gotten, this is I don't believe this is a book for atheists. It feels like a book for Christians, if you know what I'm saying. A book for people who already believe, but maybe have an atheist friend that asks them, questions and stuff. So maybe they want a response, or maybe they just, want to feel better about themselves. I'd go as far as say is a book like this could even be targeted to people who just want to feel superior. But, yeah. I suppose I should talk a bit more about where I'm coming from before I get into this, obviously, if I'm going to be making comments. I was raised Christian, like I said. When I was about 12, 13 years old, I started asking questions, generally selfish questions. Why do I have to pay tithe in church? Why do I have to give my money to the church? What has God ever done for me? That sort of thing. Typical teenage rebellion. I'm not ashamed to admit that that's where it started. That is how it started for me. And it progressed from there. I asked more questions, of course. Why is there evil? Obviously. A question that I don't know that anyone can answer. It's a tough one, certainly. Better men than me have wrestled with it. But as time went on, I simply never went back to God. I never went back to church. I didn't go back. There was no appeal. I learned more and more about the world and life and stuff, and it started getting uncomfortable. People would see God where I would not. They would see God in, the miracle of a cancer patient surviving. They'd see God helping that person live. I'd see doctors. I'd see good genes. I'd see the advancement of medicine. People would see God in the rescue of a child from a burning building. I'd see the selfless sacrifice of a fireman. It made me uncomfortable. It felt like I personally felt that giving praise to God for stuff like that takes away from the people involved. I'm drifting off a bit there, but you see where I'm going with this? I lost touch, never got it back, and eventually I started to feel very strongly about religion, that it was definitely a negative influence in many cases. But, and this is important, I do keep an open mind. I make a point of it. There is, Christians will often talk about, and there is definitely a breed of atheist who would not believe were God to appear before them. I'm not that kind of atheist. That's not... If God appeared before me and demonstrated his power, that would go a very long way towards changing my beliefs. So, there's hope for this book. If it presents a good argument, and it may, I may be converted by the end of this. But I don't think that's going to happen. Because I've read a few pages into this, and it's not good. Yeah, okay, without further ado, let's get into this. I have the book here, obviously. I page through this. All right. Let us begin with the introduction. Finding the box top to the puzzle of life. It starts us off with a quote from Philip E. Johnson, who I do not immediately recognize. Hit up the Google machine for that really quick. All right. According to the Wiki machine, he is a retired Berkeley law professor and author. Considered to be the father of the intelligent design movement. Critic of Darwinism and scientific materialism. Not a guy I would get along with. I'll leave it at that. One who claims to be a skeptic of one set of beliefs is actually a true believer in another set of beliefs. Okay, I think that quote might be a little out of context, but it reads to me as saying one who claims not to like the color red is actually wearing a different color shirt. Technically true, but not particularly deep. All right. We're going to start in on this. This looks like it's written in a first person, so keep in mind this is not me telling a story. This is me reading from a book. The university religion professor gave his wide-eyed undergraduate class a clear warning the very first day of the semester. "Please leave your religious beliefs at home," he demanded. "As we look at the Old Testament, I may make some observations that will run contrary to what you've been taught in Sunday school. It's not my purpose to offend anyone, but it is my purpose to be as objective as possible in analyzing the text. That sounded great to me. After all, I, Frank, enrolled in that class because I was in the midst of a spiritual search. I didn't want any religious party line. I just wanted to know if there was a God or not. What better place, I thought, to get some objectivity about God and the Bible than a secular school like the University of Rochester? I'm sorry. From the beginning, the professor took a very skeptical view of the Old Testament. Let me take a moment there. It's not hard to do. If you've read the Old Testament, it's fantastic. A bit. Entertaining, definitely. He immediately affirmed the theory that Moses did not write the first 5 books of the Bible, and that many of the Bible's supposed prophetic passages were written about after the fact. I should probably take this time right now to assert that I am not, in fact, a biblical scholar. That is not my area of expertise. In fact, were I to present any credentials at all, they would be a very short list. I'm a young person. I think that's about it. A young person armchair philosopher, I guess. Right. I'm sorry. Continuing on. Written after the fact. He also suggested that the Jews originally believed in many gods, but that one God ultimately won the day because the final editors of the Old Testament were religious fanatic monotheists. Now, there's probably something to that. And once again, I'm not a scholar, I don't know, but most of the students had no trouble with his analysis, except one young man a couple rows ahead of me. As the semester wore on, that student became visibly more agitated with the professor's skeptical theories. One day, when the professor began to criticize sections of Isaiah, the student could no longer moderate his displeasure. "That's not right," he blurted out. "This is the Word of God." "That guy's too religious," I quietly whispered to the person sitting next to me. "Look," the professor reminded everyone, "I told you all at the beginning that you must leave your religious beliefs at home. We will not be able to be objective if you can't do that." "But you're not being objective," charged the student as he stood up. "You're being overly skeptical." Take another moment here. I think you probably can be overly skeptical, but on the other hand, a healthy dose of skepticism is good. Especially these days, on the internet and stuff, skepticism is a good thing. In moderation, I guess, is the caveat to that. You can have too much of anything, presumably. I'm not sure I could have too much ice cream. Let the professor teach, sit down, this isn't Sunday school. The professor tried to diffuse the situation, but the flustered student stormed out and never returned. Okay. If your beliefs are that strong, it's interesting that you were going to a university that this person has, that the author here has touted as being secular. I think. But, I don't know. I probably would have bailed on the first day when he said, "Leave your religious beliefs at home." That's never a good sign for you if you are, possess religious beliefs very strongly. Best to take warnings like that. While I had some sympathy for the student and could see that the professor had his own anti-religious bias, I also wanted to hear more of what he had to say about the Old Testament, and particularly about God. When the semester ended, I was somewhat convinced that the professor was right. The Old Testament was not to be taken at face value. However, I still didn't have an answer to my most basic question. Does God exist? I felt completely unfulfilled when the last class ended. I had no closure, no answer, so I approached the professor, who was surrounded by students asking final questions. "Professor," I said, after waiting until just about everyone else had left, "thanks for the class. I think I've learned a new perspective, but I still have one huge question." "Sure, go ahead," he said. "I enrolled in this class to find out if there really is a God or not." "Well, is there?" Without a moment's hesitation, he snapped, "I don't know." "You don't know?" No, I have no idea. I was stunned. I felt like scolding him by saying, "Wait a minute, you're teaching that the Old Testament is false, and yet you don't know whether there's a God or not? The Old Testament could be true if God actually exists." Yes, I suppose. Should also be false, even if God exists. It doesn't really sound like it's the professor's job to tell you. But since the final grades were not in, I thought better of it. Instead, I simply walked out, frustrated with the entire semester. I could have respected a qualified yes or no with some reasons given, but you can't accept a qualified "I don't know"? That's the world is rarely binary. Not like that, anyways. But I don't know. I could get that from an uninformed man on the street. I expected a lot more from a university religion professor. There's degrees of "I don't know." Like, if you ask me about time travel and I say "I don't know," it doesn't mean as much as if you ask like Stephen Hawking and he says "I don't know." Stephen Hawking's "I don't know" means a hell of a lot more than mine in that circumstance. I later learned that my expectations were too high for the modern university. The term university is actually composed of the words unity and diversity. When one attends a university, he is supposed to be guided in the quest to find unity in diversity, namely how all the diverse fields of knowledge, the arts, philosophy, and physical sciences, mathematics, etc., fit together to provide a unified picture of life. A tall task indeed, but one that modern university has not only abandoned, but reversed. Instead of universities, we now have pluriversities, institutions that deem every viewpoint, no matter how ridiculous, just as valid as any other. I almost agree with that. There are some universities that they offer some courses. Thanks to a couple blogs I read, specifically I'm thinking of alternative medicine courses being offered at universities, like acupuncture and stuff. Weird stuff. That is, except the viewpoint that just one religion or worldview could be true. That's the one viewpoint considered intolerant and bigoted on most college campuses. I don't know. A lot of this just screams Christian persecution complex. Just throwing that out there. Despite the denial streaming from universities, we believe that there is a way to discover unity and diversity, and if one were to discover such unity, it would be like seeing the box top of a jigsaw puzzle. Just as the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle are difficult to put together without the picture on the box top, the many diverse pieces of life make no sense without some kind of unifying big picture. The question is, does anyone have the box top to this puzzle we call life? Many world religions claim that they do. Are any of them correct? You all know what I think going into this. I'm keeping an open mind here. I'm thinking about this stuff. Religion in the box top. World religions are often attempts to provide a box top that allows you to see how the many pieces of life's puzzle make a complete cohesive picture. This picture usually, and for good reason, begins with some sort of claim about God. What someone believes about God affects everything else that he or she believes. When Mortimer Adler was asked why the God section was the largest in the Great Books of the Western World series, which he edited, he insightfully observed that it's because more implications flow from the subject of God than from any other subject. Indeed, the 5 most consequential questions in life are these. Origin, where did we come from? Identity, who are we? Meaning, why are we here? Morality, how should we live? Destiny, where are we going? The answers to each of these questions depend on the existence of God. If God exists, then there's ultimate meaning and purpose to your life. If there's a real purpose to your life, then there's a real right and wrong way to live it. Choices you make now not only affect you here, but will affect you in eternity. On the other hand, if there is no God, then your life ultimately means nothing, since there's no enduring purpose in life. There's no right or wrong way to live it, and it doesn't matter how you live or what you believe. Your destiny is dust. That's an assertion that gets tossed around a lot. And I feel it's almost insulting to me personally sometimes. And, other people that think similar to me. That if there's no God, life is meaningless. Life is without merit or purpose. But that's clearly not true. I mean, you can have art without God. You can have beauty. You can have purpose. You can have... Is it suddenly wrong to help people if there is no God? Can you not devote your life to civil works? To helping the people, the populace? Can you not devote your life to art, to music, to literature? Can you not devote your life to the pursuit of knowledge? Is knowledge... This idea that without God there can be no purpose is just wrong. I mean, yeah, you don't believe in God or religion, then there's no afterlife, but that just makes your time here on Earth, not dead, all the more important, doesn't it? Do you see why I'm starting to get worried here? If this is what they're presenting in the introduction to their book, I could just be in for just the worst of Christian apologetics. Let's keep going. I promised my friend I'd read this, and I'm going to go through it. Hopefully with all of you. So which world religion, if any, answers the God question correctly? Does any religion provide the true box top for life? The common wisdom says no, for a number of reasons. First, many say it is unreasonable to believe that one religion could be exclusively true. If one religion were really true, it would mean that billions of religious people from other religious faiths are wrong today and have been wrong throughout the centuries. Now, that's a big problem if Christianity is true, because Christianity seems to teach that non-Christians are going to hell. Oh no. There's also the not unfounded fear that those who think they have the truth will be intolerant of those who won't accept it. Easygoing Americans are more apt to believe that no religion is the truth. The sentiment is often illustrated by the favorite parable of many university professors, the parable of the 6 blind men and the elephant. This is where each blind man feels a different part of the elephant and therefore reaches a different conclusion about the object in front of him. One grabs the tusk and says, "This is a spear." Another feels the trunk and says, "This is a snake." The one hugging the leg claims, "This is a tree." The man holding the tail thinks, "I have a rope." The one feeling the ear believes, "This is a fan." And the one leaning on the elephant's side is certain, "This is a wall." These blind men are said to represent world religions because they each come to a different conclusion about what they are sensing. Like each blind man, we are told, no one religion has the truth. I don't know any blind people. So I make this assertion with no personal experience. I'm simply inferring from my experience as a human being and my reliance on the fact that blind people are also human beings. And that is that blind people do not just feel one part of an object and make an assumption about it when first encountering a new object. Much like you don't simply look at one part of an object if you happen to possess sight. You don't simply look at, the stand for a lamp and say, it's a pen. It's few people like to operate with that little information. Okay, I resist the urge to make a crack there. But, anyways, that having been said, no one religion has the complete box top. Religions are simply different paths up the same mountain. This, of course, greatly appeals to the broadly tolerant American mind. In America, truth in religion is considered an oxymoron. There's no truth in religion, we are told. It's all a matter of taste or opinion. You like chocolate, I like vanilla. You like Christianity, I like Islam. If Buddhism works for you, then it's true for you. Besides, you ought not judge me for your beliefs. He raises an interesting point here about the culture teaching you not to judge religion. Religion is deeply personal. You shouldn't go there. That I believe is wrong. Whoever's right, it's wrong to demand that you be left alone for your religious beliefs. That's not sound. That's not a sound way to live. My belief is that all beliefs should be open to criticism, including and especially my own. It's actually it's something something people around me are uncomfortable with. I'm often very critical. I like to get in arguments. I like to argue. I find it entertaining and I find it enlightening. When I'm wrong, I want to know about it. This is part of why I'm here on YouTube reading this book with you and talking about what I believe. I want to hear from other people. What do they know? What do they think? What do they believe? Will they share? Will they tell me? Will you explain to me if I'm wrong? It's good to know. I want to know if I'm wrong. And I think other people should want to know if they're wrong. It's how you grow. It's how you evolve. The second major problem with truth in religion is that some pieces of life seem to defy explanation. They don't appear to fit any religious box top. These include the existence of evil and the silence of God in the face of that evil. These are especially powerful objections to anyone claiming that an all-powerful God exists. Many skeptics and atheists argue that if one true powerful God actually exists, then he would intervene to clear up the confusion. After all, if God is really out there, then why does he seem to hide himself? Why doesn't he just show up to debunk the false religions and end all the controversy? Why doesn't he intervene to stop all the evil in the world, including all the religious wars that are such a black mark on his name? And why does he allow bad things to happen to good people? These are difficult questions for anyone claiming that their theistic religion is true. Finally, many modern intellectuals imply that any box top based on religion wouldn't be legitimate anyway. Why? Because they say, only science yields truth. Not only has evolution removed the need for God, they say, but only what is testable in a laboratory can be considered true. That is, only science deals in matters of fact, while religion stays merely in the realm of faith. I don't really have much to say to that. So there's no sense in trying to muster evidence or facts to support religion, because that would be like mustering facts to prove that the chocolate ice cream tastes better than vanilla ice cream. You can't prove preferences. Okay, that's painting scientists with a broad brush, obviously. I'm sure many scientists would love to see evidence raised for religion. In fact, I'm certain many do. I'm not officially a scientist, but I certainly take an interest in scientific goings-on that I am aware of, that enter my small sphere of interest. I'd love to see evidence for religion. I take every chance I get to talk to people about it, to read books about it. Got a book right here. Reading about it. Reading with you. Therefore, since they insist that religion is never a matter of objective fact, but merely subjective taste, any box top derived from religion couldn't provide the objective picture of life we're looking for. So where does all this leave us? In the search for God and for life's box top hopeless? Should we assume that there's no objective meaning to life, and each invent our own subjective box top? Should we be content with the professor's I don't know answer? We don't think so. We believe that there is a real answer, and despite the powerful objections we have identified, which we will address in later chapters, we believe that the answer is very reasonable. In fact, we believe this answer is more reasonable and requires less faith than any other possible answer, including that of an atheist. Let's begin to show what we mean. And once again, we bring up faith in atheism, which is I find almost offensive, mostly because of how I choose to define faith. And if I promise to come back to that if they don't bring it up themselves about defining faith. Because that's important, obviously, in a book about I don't have the faith to be an atheist. What kind of God? Before we go any further, let's be sure we're clear on terminology. Most of the world's major religions fall into one of these three religious worldviews: theism, pantheism, and atheism. A theist is someone who believes in a personal God who created the universe but is not part of the universe. This would be roughly equivalent to a painter in a painting. God is like the painter and his creation is like the painting. God made the painting and his attributes are expressed in it, but God is not the painting. Major theistic religions are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. By contrast, a pantheist is someone who believes in an impersonal God that literally is the universe. So rather than making the painting, pantheists believe God is the painting. In fact, pantheists believe that God is everything that exists. God is the grass, God is the sky, God is the tree, God is the book, God is you, God is me, etc. Major pantheistic religions are of the Eastern variety, such as Hinduism, some forms of Buddhism, and many forms of the New Age. An atheist, of course, is someone who does not believe in any type of God. To follow our analogy, atheist believes that what looks like a painting has always existed and no one painted it. Religious humanists would fall in this category. Here's an easy way to remember these three religious worldviews. Theism, God made all. Pantheism, God is all. Atheism, no God at all. In figure I, I can't tell if it's a Roman numeral 1 or an I. It's probably a Roman numeral 1. So 1.2, theism is depicted as the hand holding up the world. Pantheism is the hand in the world, and atheism is nothing but the world. And there's figure, I'm sure that was worth the effort for his little grade school notation scribbles of worlds and hands. One other term that we will use frequently is agnostic. That's someone who is unsure about the question of God. So now that we've defined our terms, let's get back to this issue of faith and religion. Faith and religion. Despite its apparent persuasiveness, the claim that religion is simply a matter of faith is nothing more than a modern myth. It's just not true. While religion certainly requires faith, religion is not only about faith. Facts are also central to all religion because all religious worldviews, including atheism, make truth claims, and many of those truth claims can be evaluated through scientific and historical investigation. For example, theists, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, etc., say that the universe had a beginning, while many atheists and pantheists say that it did not. The universe is eternal. These are mutually exclusive claims. They can't both be right. I'm willing to bet money there are multiple worldviews where both of those are true. And I'm sure some of them even have some level of scientific merit to them. These are mutually exclusive claims. They can't both be right. Either the universe had a beginning or it did not. By investigating the nature and history of the universe, we can reasonably conclude that one view is right and the other is wrong. The alleged resurrection of Christ presents another example. Christians claim that Jesus rose from the dead, while Muslims say that Jesus never even died. Again, one of these views is right and the other is wrong. Or, and I admit they could just both be wrong and Christ never existed. It's a valid theory. I suppose that would mean I wasn't being tolerant enough. Although they don't seem to be encouraging tolerance here, which is nice, so I guess I can be as mean as I want. Yeah, I'll try to keep it down. Keeping an open mind. We haven't gotten to the evidence yet, but I'm keeping it open. By evaluating each of these conflicting truth claims against the historical evidence. Notice that not only do different religions attempt to answer these questions, but scientists also have something to say about these matters. That is, science and religion often address the same questions. Where did the universe come from? Where did life come from? Are miracles possible? And so on. In other words, science and religion are not mutually exclusive categories, as some have suggested. I'd like to take a moment right now to point out that some of those suggesting it were in fact religious figures trying to keep science out of their religion and keep the religion away from the science. It's a two-way street. They don't emphasize that. So I think it's important to observe. Certainly not all religious claims are open to scientific or historic investigation. Some are unverifiable dogma. Nevertheless, the validity of many religious beliefs can be checked out. Some beliefs are reasonable. They can be proven with a high degree of certainty, while others are clearly unreasonable. Let that speak for itself. The problems with Christianity. Is Christianity reasonable? We believe it is. However, unless one makes a thorough investigation of the evidence with an open mind, belief in Christianity may appear to be problematic. First, there are many perceived intellectual objections, like those mentioned above, the problem of evil and the objections of many scientists. Second, there are emotional obstacles that sometimes obstruct the acceptance of Christianity. Christian exclusivism, the doctrine of hell, and the hypocrisy of Christians are emotional roadblocks to just about everyone. I would contend some of those are also intellectual. In fact, hypocrisy in the church probably repels people more than any other factor. Someone once said the biggest problem with Christianity is Christians. Ha ha ha. Isn't it funny that they said that? The author seems to think so. I think he thinks he's being clever. Finally, there are volitional reasons to reject Christianity, namely Christian morality, which seems to restrict our choices in life. Since most of us don't want to answer to anyone, yielding our freedom to an unseen God is not something we naturally want to do. Yet despite these intellectual, emotional, and volitional obstacles, we submit that it's not faith in Christianity that's difficult, but faith in atheism or any other religion. That is, once one looks at the evidence, we think it takes more faith to be a non-Christian than it does to be a Christian. That was all in italics for emphasis. So, we'll see where the faith lies by the end of this, people. I want to know. I'm curious. Rooted in the fact that every religious... Okay, hold on. This may seem like a counterintuitive claim, but it's simply rooted in the fact that every religious worldview requires faith, even the worldview that says there is no God. Okay, I'm hoping they divine faith here really soon. They're making a big assertion there. Why? Because as limited human beings, we do not possess the type of knowledge that will provide us with absolute proof of God's existence or non-existence. Outside of the knowledge of our own existence, I know I exist because I have to exist in order to ponder the question, we deal in the realm of probability. Whatever we've concluded about the existence of God, it's always possible that the opposite conclusion is true. In fact, it is possible that our conclusions in this book are wrong. We don't think they are because we have good evidence to support them. Looking forward to that. Indeed, we think our conclusions are true beyond a reasonable doubt. This type of certainty, say 95+% certain, is the best that fallible and finite human being can attain for most questions, and it is more than sufficient for even the biggest decisions in life. I don't know, depending how big it is, I might want more than 95%. Just saying. That's like what? That's like 19/20ths? It's like a 1 in 20 chance that you're wrong. Nevertheless, some faith is required to overcome the possibility that we are wrong. The faith of an atheist. Okay, here we go. While some faith is required for our conclusions, it's often forgotten that faith is also required to believe any worldview, including atheism and pantheism. We were reminded of this recently when we met an atheist named Barry at one of our seminars. Barry was incredulous that a mutual friend, Steve, had become a Christian. He said, "I can't figure Steve out. He claims to be intellectual, but he can't answer all of the objections I pose to him about Christianity. He says he doesn't have all the answers because he's new and still learning." I, Frank, said, "Barry, it's virtually impossible to know everything about a particular topic, and it's certainly impossible when that topic is an infinite God. So there has to come a point where you realize you have enough information to come to a conclusion, even if unanswered questions remain." Barry agreed, but still didn't realize he was doing exactly what he was chiding Steve for doing. Barry had decided his view, atheism, was correct, even though he did not have exhaustive information to support it. Did he know for sure there is no God? Had he investigated every argument and evidence for the existence of God? Did he possess exhaustive information on the question of God? Could he answer every objection to atheism? Of course not. Indeed, it would be impossible to do so, since Barry, like Steve, is dealing in the realm of probability rather than absolute certainty. He has to have a certain amount of faith to believe that God does not exist. Okay. This is the sort of thing that's making me think that this book is meant more for Christians, more for Christians who have atheist friends that bash on them for their faith or whatever. This book says, hey, look at this. Hey, atheists, they have just as much faith as you, so don't take any shit from them. No siree. They're just like you. They're the hypocrites. Okay, I should probably define my view of faith. Faith to me is acceptance without corroborating evidence, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. A good way of putting it, even. It is, that is anathema to me. I can't claim 100% to not possess faith about something. I'm sure I do. I have faith that I'm not the only living thing in the universe. There's no proof for it. There's no proof that I'm not just a butterfly dreaming I'm a man. There's things you have to have a certain level of faith that reality is the way it appears to be, or else you can't even function as a living being. Beyond that, though, I try to minimize faith, because faith can be dangerous. Skepticism is protection. It protects you from snake oil salesmen, the people who would deceive you, would lie to you. Yeah. Raises questions. Questions are almost always good. So to have faith is not good. Faith doesn't encourage questions. Faith encourages you to blindly accept that whatever it is you have faith in is whatever you have faith in. I'm not at my most eloquent here. I'm a little frustrated with this book. But, yeah. I try to avoid faith, on principle. I don't have faith that God doesn't exist. I believe that God doesn't exist based on the fact that I've not been presented with convincing evidence of his existence. I've not seen God. I've not seen proof of God. I've not seen proof that the Bible offers enough proof of anything, really. I've seen a lot of stuff saying the Bible's a load of horse pucky. And a lot of that might be what I've been exposed to just in my chosen matters of reading. And there's obviously a bit of personal bias there. I can't be completely objective. So I prefer to read about people talking about stuff that's wrong with the Bible. That doesn't mean there's not stuff that's right with the Bible. I'm sure plenty of scholars have gotten factual, historical information out of the Bible. But we'll get to that. They talk about the Bible later on in here. I think. It'd be crazy not to. Alright. Although he claimed to be an agnostic, Carl Sagan made the ultimate statement of faith in atheistic materialism when he claimed that the cosmos is all that is, ever was, or ever will be. Oh, not Carl Sagan. You guys can't bash on Carl Sagan. You will worship Carl Sagan as a god. You will kneel at the ground he walks on. Joking here, obviously, but I don't believe I've personally read that quote, but it definitely reads like it was taken out of context. It's certainly being spun here. How did he know that for sure? He didn't. How could he? He was a limited human being with limited knowledge. Sagan was operating in the realm of probability just like Christians are when they say God exists. How many Christians do you know who say God probably exists? These guys don't even say God probably exists. They act like that's what they're saying. But they're not. They're saying God exists. In fact, I may be reading too much into this, but I think they're saying God exists and you're an idiot if you don't believe in him. That might just be my spin on things, but I certainly feel like I'm being talked down to at points here. The question is, who has more evidence for their conclusion? Which conclusion is more reasonable? As we'll see when we look at the evidence, the atheist has to muster a lot more faith than the Christian. You may be thinking, the atheist has to muster a lot more faith than the Christian. What possibly could Geisler and Turek mean by that? I think they mean exactly. Take that statement at face value. I think they're saying it takes more faith to be an atheist than a Christian. I don't think that's true, but I think that's what they're saying. I don't know what sort of viewer they're targeting here. If they think their viewers are wondering about that. We mean that the less evidence you have for your position, the more faith you need to believe it, and vice versa. Faith covers a gap in knowledge, and it turns out that atheists have even bigger gaps in knowledge because they have far less evidence for their beliefs than Christians have for theirs. In other words, the empirical, forensic, and philosophical evidence strongly supports conclusions consistent with Christianity and inconsistent with atheism. Here are a few examples of that evidence that we'll unpack in the ensuing chapters. Here goes. The scientific evidence overwhelmingly confirms that the universe exploded into being out of nothing. Either someone created something out of nothing, the Christian view, or no one created something out of nothing, the atheistic view. Which view is far more reasonable? The Christian view. Which view requires more faith? The atheistic view. Really? Really, they're gonna break it down to terms that simple. That's yeah. 2. The simplest life form contains the information equivalent of 1,000 encyclopedias. Golly, that's a big number. It must mean something. Christians believe only an intelligent being can create a life form containing the equivalent of 1,000 encyclopedias. Atheists believe non-intelligent natural forces can do it. Christians have evidence to support their conclusion. Since atheists don't have any such evidence, their belief requires a lot more faith. Wow. Yeah. I don't really know what to say to that. That's kind of like... This sort of thing makes me wish this thing made me wish I studied everything. I have a powerful hunger for information. I love to learn. And one of my greatest regrets in life is that there simply isn't enough time in a human lifespan to learn all of the accumulated knowledge of the human race. I have to specialize. And I haven't even begun yet. begun that journey. But this sort of thing, this makes me wish I knew about, biology, evolution, abiogenesis. 3. Hundreds of years beforehand, ancient writings foretold the coming of a man who would actually be God. This man-God, it was foretold, would be born in a particular city, from a particular bloodline, suffer in a particular way, die at a particular time, and rise from the dead to atone for the sins of the world. Immediately after the predicted time, multiple eyewitnesses proclaimed and later recorded that those predicted events had actually occurred. Those eyewitnesses endured persecution and death when they could have saved themselves by denying the events. Thousands of people in Jerusalem were then converted after seeing or hearing of these events, and this belief swept quickly across the entire world. Ancient historians and writers allude to or confirm these events, and archaeology corroborates them. Having seen evidence from creation that God exists, point 1 above, Christians believe these multiple lines of evidence show beyond a reasonable doubt that God had a hand in these events. Atheists must have a lot more faith to explain away the predictions, the eyewitness testimony, the willingness of the eyewitnesses to suffer and die, the origin of the Christian church, and the corroborating testimony of the other writers, archaeological finds, and other evidence that we'll investigate later. I've not read this book, I repeat, but I've read others like it that have purported to present evidence about the history of biblical events and stuff, and I've followed up on some of their references. I've looked around and read up on a lot of detailed, insightful reviews of those such books, and was not overly impressed by their reasoning and their evidence. But we'll see about this one. Haven't read this one. Let's keep going. Open minds, people. Now, perhaps these 3 points have raised in your mind some questions and objections. Definitely questions, probably an objection or two. I've voiced 1 or 2 here. They should, because we're leaving a lot out of the detail. We're leaving out a lot of the detail we'll unpack throughout the book. The main point for now is that you see what we mean when we say that every worldview, including atheism, requires some degree of faith. Even skeptics have faith. They have faith that skepticism is true. Likewise, agnostics have faith that agnosticism is true. Skeptics have faith that skepticism is true. I don't know if I'm revealing my own blatant ignorance of terms here, but that may be one of the stupidest things I've ever seen put in words. Skepticism is true. Skeptics have faith that skepticism is true. Agnostics have faith that agnosticism is true. The value they gave for agnostics was that they didn't know whether God existed or not. That was their definition that they gave. And now they're saying that agnostics have faith that they don't know whether God exists or not. I don't have high hopes. This is going downhill pretty fast. There are no neutral positions when it comes to beliefs. As Philip Johnson so aptly put it, one who claims to be a skeptic of one set of beliefs is actually a true believer in another set of beliefs. That was the quote at the beginning. The one I said, one person who claims not to like the color red is often wearing a different color shirt. I don't like the color yellow, and I often choose not to wear yellow shirts. I'm wearing an orange shirt right now, in fact. You could say I have faith that I don't like the color yellow. Well, no, you couldn't say that because it'd be dumb. But in other words, atheists who are naturally skeptical of Christianity turn out to be true believers in atheism. There's a webcomic I love for that. Actually, it has a bunch of people in robes kneeling before an altar with a big A on it and a skull underneath it that says, I am Athe, I do not exist. Athe is the god of the atheists. He does not exist. True believers, unite! All hail Athe, he does not exist. Discovering the box top. We claim that there is strong evidence supporting Christianity. How will we proceed through this evidence? Since about 1996, we have traveled together around the country conducting a seminar called The 12 Points That Show Christianity is True. In it, we proceed logically from the question of truth all the way to the conclusion that the Bible is the Word of God. This book generally will follow the same logical 12-point progression. The truth about reality is knowable. The opposite of true is false. It is true that the theistic God exists. This is evidenced by the A, beginning of the universe, B, design of the universe, C, design of life, D, moral law. 4, if God exists, then miracles are possible. 5, miracles can be used to confirm a message from God. 6, the New Testament is historically reliable. This is evidenced by A, early testimony, B, eyewitness testimony, C, uninvented testimony. D, eyewitnesses who were not deceived. Okay, I think you're repeating yourselves now. 7, the New Testament says Jesus claimed to be God. 8, Jesus' claim to be God was miraculously confirmed by A, his fulfillment of many prophecies about himself, B, his sinless life and miraculous deeds, C, his prediction and accomplishment of his resurrection, 9, therefore, Jesus is God, 10, whatever Jesus, who is God, teaches is true, Jesus taught that the Bible is the Word of God, and 12, that was 11, Jesus taught that the Bible is the Word of God, 12, therefore it is true that the Bible is the Word of God, and anything opposed to it is false. Even if that includes reality. No, forget I said that. I'm being mean. I shouldn't be mean. I'm keeping an open mind. Some of these. Have you read the Bible? There's some bad stuff in the Bible. There's stuff in the Bible I don't want to believe is true because it's that bad. If the Bible is the Word of God, then God has a lot of questions to answer. That's another facet of my own personal beliefs. If you want to know a little bit more about me, it's really hard to argue the existence of God or the factuality of the Bible. Especially since I'm not a scholar or an archaeologist. So one of my preferred things to discuss is to just work off the presumption that God is real. It's easier to talk to Christians working from that viewpoint. And then I assert that if God does exist, he's not worthy of worship. And I might talk about that later, probably in another video. Just more about me. If I'm going to be reading this book with you, I'm sure you want to know more about me. If you wanted to just read the book, you'd go buy the book. I don't know that it's worth it yet. I'll let you know at the end of this video whether this book is worth your money. Alright, before we begin presenting this line of reasoning, please note 5 points. First, we are not suggesting that the above points are true by definition. Most of these points are premises that need to be justified by evidence. For example, point 3 claims, it is true that the theistic God exists. That claim isn't true just because we say so. It needs to be backed up by good evidence, by good reasons. We'll give those good reasons when we get to that point in the book. Excellent. Evidence is important. Second, notice that we are starting at the point of complete skepticism. That is, We're starting with a person who says he doesn't even believe in truth. We need to start there, because if the prevailing view of the culture is right, that there is no truth, then it can't be true that a theistic God exists or that there is a true word from that God. However, if there is truth, and that truth can be known, then we can go on to investigate the truth of God's existence and the other points that follow. Third, if this line of reasoning is sound, and that's a big if that this book will attempt to show, it necessarily disproves other religions where they differ from the Bible. This sounds incredibly arrogant and presumptuous, but we'll address that later. This would not mean that all other religions are completely false or that they have no truth. Nearly all religions have some truth. We're simply saying that if the Bible is true, that any specific claim that contradicts the Bible must be false, including when the Bible contradicts itself. No, that's not in the book, and once again, I'm being intolerant. I'm being closed-minded. I need to open my mind. I need to be open-minded. The jokes write themselves sometimes. For example, if the Bible is true and it says that there is a God beyond the universe who created and sustains the universe, then any claim that denies theism must be false. Likewise, if the Bible is true and it claims that Jesus rose from the dead, then the Quranic denial of that fact must be false. By the way, the reverse would also be true. If the evidence showed that the Quran was true, then the Bible would be false wherever it contradicted the Quran. It tells me we're not going to be talking much about the Quran. Fourth, we give evidence for Christianity because we ought to live our lives based on truth. Socrates once said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And that is why I believe that religion shouldn't be unassailable. The unexamined life is not worth living. We believe that the unexamined faith is not worth believing. Furthermore, contrary to popular opinion, Christians are not supposed to just have faith. Christians are commanded to know what they believe and why they believe it. They are commanded to give answers to those who ask and to demolish arguments against the Christian faith. Since God is reasonable, I don't have a comment there. Any comment I would have would just be more mean close-mindedness. And wants us to use our reason. Christians don't get brownie points for being stupid. In fact, using reason is part of the greatest commandment, which according to Jesus is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. I don't know about that Christians not getting brownie points for being stupid. Stupid might be a strong word, but I remember multiple points in the Bible where you are encouraged or commanded to have faith like a child, or have the belief of a child, the wonder of a child. Children are kind of dumb. It's one of their defining characteristics. I know kids. I was a kid once. I'm still a kid, actually, by a lot of definitions. But, yeah, kids are not too bright. Childlike wonder is adorable and all, but your 5-year-old's not going to be able to change the oil in my car. You know what I'm saying? Do algebra. And another common thing where humans are constantly compared to sheep. I don't know if you've met a sheep. They're not very clever. So, yeah. Finally, we're often asked if Christianity has so much evidence behind it, then why don't more people believe it? That is a really good question. And in fact, one I often ask myself if I ever have, a moment of wondering if Christianity is so accurate and so well proven. Why wasn't there a news broadcast? I didn't say I've not seen any newspapers that say God proven to exist. There is a God. We found Jesus. It's just something I think about. It's clearly something they're thinking about. Our answer: although we believe the evidence we're about to present shows us that the Bible is true beyond reasonable doubt, no amount of evidence can compel anyone to believe it. Also true. No amount of evidence is irrefutable. But I like to think if given a reasonable amount of evidence, I will change my beliefs. Open mind here. Trying to keep an open mind. I don't want to be the stubborn atheist guy who's like, well, no, your God is stupid. No. That's not me. If God exists, I want to know about it, because that's important stuff. Belief requires assent not only of the mind, but also of the will. While many non-Christians have honest intellectual questions, we've found that many more seem to have a volitional resistance to Christianity. In other words, it's not that they don't have evidence to believe, it's that they don't want to believe. The great atheist Friedrich Nietzsche exemplified this type of person. He wrote, if one were to prove this God of the Christians to us, we should be even less able to believe in him, and it is our preference that decides against Christianity, not arguments. Obviously, Nietzsche's belief was based on his will, not just his intellect. I have not read Nietzsche. A personal failing of mine. I probably should. At some point. I will get around to reading Nietzsche. But I do know that Nietzsche is often misquoted, so I don't know how trustworthy these quotes are. I find that Nietzsche is often much maligned. Poor guy. At this point, a skeptic might reverse the argument by claiming that it's the Christian who simply wants to believe. True, many Christians believe only because they want to and cannot justify their belief with evidence. They simply have faith that the Bible is true, and merely wanting something to be true doesn't make it so. However, what we are saying is that many non-Christians do the same thing. They take a leap of faith that their non-Christian beliefs are true simply because they want them to be true. In the ensuing chapters, we'll take a hard look at the evidence to see who has to take the bigger leap. The skeptic might then ask, why would anyone want Christianity to be false? Why would anyone not want the free gift of forgiveness? Good question, but we think the answer lies in the volitional factors we touched on earlier. Namely, many believe that accepting the truth of Christianity would require them to change their thinking, friends, priorities, lifestyles, or morals, and they are not quite willing to give up control over their lives in order to make these changes. They believe that life would be easier and more fun without such changes. Perhaps they realize that while Christianity is all about forgiveness, it's also about denying yourself and carrying your cross. Indeed, Christianity is free, but it can cost you your life. If you're a Christian, you could die. Christianity kills. Can we get like a Surgeon General warning on Bibles now? Warning, Christianity causes lung cancer. Oh, okay. I'm being mean again. I'm sorry, I'm being mean again. I'm being ugly. There's a difference between proving a proposition and accepting a proposition. We might be able to prove Christianity is true beyond reasonable doubt, but only you can choose to accept it. Please consider this question to see if you're open to acceptance. If someone could provide reasonable answers to the most significant questions and objections you have about Christianity, reasonable to point that Christianity seems true beyond a reasonable doubt, would you then become a Christian? I'd like to take a moment and say, yes, I would, of course. If you presented me with enough evidence, good evidence of anything, I'd accept it. I don't know that I'd convert to Christianity because, like I said, there's some stuff in the Bible. There's some bad stuff in the Bible. Yeah. I've heard from people who have specifically said that studying the Bible is what led them away from Christianity. Maybe I should do a reading of the Bible, actually, after this. I'm sure that would be interesting. I'll start a series. I'll just read books. Read books to you guys. You guys watch people play video games. It's almost the same. Would you then become a Christian? Yeah, I would. Think about that for a moment. If your honest answer is no, then your resistance to Christianity is emotional or volitional, not merely intellectual. No amount of evidence will convince you because evidence is not what's in your way. You are. In the end, only you know if you're truly open to the evidence for Christianity. It's interesting what they're doing here, and I'm pretty sure I know what they're doing here. Is they're setting it up to seem like if you don't believe by the end of the book, then it's your fault. Which is that's a little I won't say that's a little intellectually dishonest. But it's their book. They can write what they want. One beauty of God's creation is this: if you're not willing to accept Christianity, then you're free to reject it. This freedom to make choices, even the freedom to reject truth, is what makes us moral creatures and enables each of us to choose our ultimate destiny. This really hits at the heart of why we exist at all, and why God might not be as overt in revealing himself to us as some would like. For if the Bible is true, then God has provided each of us with the opportunity to make an eternal choice to either accept him or reject him. And in order to ensure that our choice is truly free, he puts us in an environment that is filled with evidence of his existence, but without his direct presence. A presence so powerful it could overwhelm our freedom and thus negate our ability to reject him. In other words, God has provided enough evidence in this life to convince anyone willing to believe, yet he also has some ambiguity. He's also left some ambiguity so as not to compel the unwilling. Once again, that was all in italics, and I hate that argument. The argument that God doesn't reveal himself because of free will. It's just bad. It's just bad. God walked with Adam and Eve. Did they not have free will? Adam talked to God. He had free will. He disobeyed God. He knew God and he disobeyed God. Seems like free will to me. Just saying. In this way, God gives us the opportunity either to love him or to reject him without violating our freedom. In fact, the purpose of this life is to make that choice freely and without coercion. For love, by definition, must be freely given. It cannot be coerced. That's why C.S. Lewis wrote, "The irresistible and indisputable are the two weapons which the very nature of God's scheme forbids him to use. Merely to override a human will, as his felt presence in any but the faintest and most mitigated degree would certainly do, would be for him useless. He cannot ravish, he can only woo." I'm sure there's a rape joke in there somewhere. Probably in the Old Testament. Heyo! Being ugly again, I'm sorry. Open mind. We hope the evidence we present in this book will in some small way woo you to God. Keep in mind that it's not our evidence, it's his. We are simply compiling it in a logical order. By using real-world stories and illustrations as often as possible, we intend to make this book readable and its reasoning easily accessible. Summary and conclusion. As we have seen, many religious truth claims can be investigated and their plausibility determined. Since all conclusions about such claims are based on probability rather than absolute certainty, they all, including atheistic claims, require some amount of faith. As we look at the evidence in the ensuing chapters, we'll see that the conclusions such as God exists and the Bible is true are certain beyond reasonable doubt. Therefore, it takes a lot more faith to be a non-Christian than it does to be a Christian. However, we have also acknowledged that evidence alone cannot convince someone to become a Christian. Some atheists and non-Christians may reject Christianity not because the evidence is inadequate, but because they don't want to accept it. Some people choose to suppress the truth rather than live by it. In fact, we humans have a fatal tendency to try to adjust the truth to fit our desires rather than adjusting our desires to fit the truth. But wait, isn't there a third alternative? What about remaining agnostic like the Old Testament professor at the beginning of his chapter? He said he didn't know if God exists. Some may think that such a person is open-minded, perhaps, but there's a big difference between being open-minded and being empty-minded. Oh my god! I love that. Let's read that again. There is a big difference between being open-minded and empty-minded. That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes when dealing about this stuff, and that's, keep your mind open, but not so open your brain falls out. Which, it applies in almost every situation. And, okay, let's keep that in mind for the rest of this book. They said it, not me. There's a big difference between being open-minded and empty-minded, okay? So I'm going to be open-minded about this. And I'm going to try and take take in everything they tell me, but I'm not going to be empty-minded about it. Okay? Neither should you. For those of you playing along at home. In light of the evidence, we think agnosticism is a decision to be empty-minded. After all, isn't the reason we should be open-minded so that we can recognize truth when we see it? Yes. So what are we to do when there's enough evidence to point us to the truth? For example, what should we do when we see evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that George Washington was the first president of the United States? Should we remain open-minded as to who the first president was? No, that would be empty-minded. Some questions are closed, as we'll see. There's enough evidence regarding Christianity to draw a reasonably certain conclusion. As Mortimer Adler observed, our conclusion about God impacts every area of our lives. It is the key to finding unity in diversity and ultimate meaning in life. It is literally the most important question for every human being to address. Fortunately, if our reasoning is correct, we will discover the box top to life's puzzle at the end of our journey. So let's take the first step on that journey. It begins with the question of truth. Chapters 1 to 2 will cover truth about reality is knowable. The opposite of true is false. It is true that the theistic God... Oh, no, it's just highlighting 1 and 2. Truth about reality is noble. The opposite of true is false. All right. Keep that in mind, folks. I'm going to take a short break here to check out the video and everything. And we'll continue on from the introduction to chapters 1 and 2 momentarily. For you, anyways. For me, I may take a longer break. I hope you enjoyed reading this book with me. I certainly enjoyed talking to you all. And I hope I can continue to entertain you in the future. Please leave a comment for me. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm certain I've made at least one claim of factuality or something, and it was probably wrong. I'm not a doctor. I'm not anything. So tell me if I'm wrong. I want to know if I'm wrong. That's why I'm reading this. If I'm wrong, I want to know. Or just comment to let me know if you liked the video, hated the video. If you don't like the color orange and think I should wear a different color shirt. I have faith that I own more than one shirt. I'm being mean again, I'm sorry. Open mind. Alright. Night all, you guys. Morning. Guess I don't know when you're watching this.